Hello and welcome back to Powerful Nothing, a Magic the Gathering podcast. Today we are going to be talking all news. A lot's been going on in the last couple of weeks of Magic. So today we are going to be spending the whole episode talking about what's coming up at the end of this year, 2024, 2025, and also a bit of 2026. There's a lot of stuff to talk about. And as always, I am joined by my co-host James. James, how's it going, dude?
Yeah, pretty good. I've been feverishly jamming Vintage Cube for the last 24 hours minus compulsory working hours. So all good, yeah.
Nice. Yeah, we're at that point of the year where I'm always kind of like, do I install MTGO? Dare I install MTGO? And then it's kind of like, no, can't be bothered.
It's a dangerous decision to make.
Yeah, let's jump in because we have a lot to talk about today. So time codes will be down in the description below if you want to jump around to all the different bits of news that we're going to be talking about. Section 1, our first topic of the day, we're going to be talking about the banned and restricted update. So no cards were banned, which I think we were kind of beforehand kind of thinking along the same lines, like on that train, kind of see, like there's been some very impactful cards with like the One Ring and Orcish Bowmasters making splash in a lot of formats, but we are still very early on in their release. They've only been out a couple of months. Yes, their numbers are very high, but it's still early days. The formats are still settling down. We've had 2 unbannings, though, which are quite interesting. We'll talk about these both. In Modern, Preordain has been unbanned, and in Legacy, Mind's Desire has been unbanned. James, I know you play a fair bit of Modern. What do you think about, firstly, Preordain being unbanned in Modern?
Yeah, really interesting one. I quite like it, actually. I would not have guessed this was where they'd go before reading the announcement, but I think it's a pretty interesting take. Definitely, I can see, so Preordain and Ponder were both banned at the same time in Modern many years ago, largely as a way to nerf like blue-red combo decks, like Blue-Red Storm and Splinter Twin. Splinter Twin's obviously now banned. Blue-Red Storm has had so many other pieces banned that it's barely a deck anymore. So it's you kind of don't have the most powerful homes for it. So you're more using it in a fairer way rather than to enable combos. I think it's pretty cool unban. I think just the power level of Modern has progressed a lot in the last, especially since both MH1 and MH2. So I think taking another look at that banned list and looking for cards to come off is a pretty good approach.
No, 100%. That does make sense. Yeah, we've gone through 2020, 2021, we've gone through 2 Modern Horizons and a third one's coming. We'll get onto that in a little bit. So yeah, I think unbanning stuff, seeing how it lies, does make a lot of sense.
Yeah, so in terms of good homes, I think do exist for it in Modern. I think it's a pretty natural fit in Murktide. Is it Murktide? Which, and I suspect part of what this BNR was meant to do is give Is It Murktide a bit of a buff, as it's kind of seen as a natural predator to the Rakdos scam deck. Rakdos Evoke, as we're meant to call it.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, and I think it's... and obviously it had been slightly falling out of favour a bit recently. Obviously, the counter-argument to that is, well, Scam plays 4 copies of Orcish Bowmasters. Preordain, not a naturally great card against that. But I think it is also worth... having these powerful cantrips that dig you to action very quickly is just, naturally very good against hand disruption, which is obviously a large part of what Rakdos Scam is about. So get it, sure, you can brief away the Preordain, but just if you're able to cut down your land count slightly and add 4 copies of Preordain, that gives you a lot more selection to then dig for either an answer to their evoke creature that's come back with malice or a threat to get ahead. So I think it is probably actually a net good thing for Murktide in that matchup, even despite the Bowmasters, because it's just a lot more. You dig a lot deep. Well, a lot deeper. You dig twice as deep as you do with Consider, for example, which is a card that deck would previously pay 4 of.
Just one thing on something you said there. I always like playing less lands where possible. I'm super greedy. Just actually kind of level me up a little bit here. How many lands can you run less if you're running for preordain over like opt or like effectively running a better cantrip? How many lands less can you run?
I think it's more that you could maybe run slightly more cantrips because they're of better quality. So I think the lists I've been seeing have been either 17 or 18 lands with 6 cantrips.
Love that.
Well, 6 of the 1 mana cantrips plus 4 Mishra's Baubles.
Yep.
So yeah, lots of cheap ways to cycle in that deck, but the fact that you're digging that extra card deeper is a pretty big game, and obviously compared to Serum Visions, you draw into your action cards straight away. Serum Visions, of course, being the blue sorcery that is draw a card, then scry 2, compared to Preordain's scry 2, then draw a card. I think it's not like Murktide Orchid is beating up on Scam really reliably, but I think like if you pal it well, I think you have to be quite conscious of the Bowmasters. Like I think, for example, you very rarely want to run out a Dragon's Rage Channeler before you have Delirium, because it's so bad for you if it gets Bowmastered down. I think if you're like conscious of those things, I think Murktide is a pretty good deck to play in a Scam-dominated meta. And I think there's also some interesting other homes for it. So I've been trying it in some Goryo's Vengeance lists, trying to Goryo's Vengeance back Atraxa. There is a little bit of natural tension with it. And this applies to quite a lot of the other blue decks of the format as well, actually, because people are very in on Leyline Binding at the moment and playing a lot of colors, playing a lot of triomes in a lot of their fair decks. That means you're often going to want to get a tapped land on turn 1, which of course is not ideal in your preordained deck. The same thing kind of applies in the creativity deck, for example, as well. But I think it's still worth trying in those places because it's such a powerful selection effect. But I think it doesn't line up like perfectly. I think the same applies for blue-white control as well. Actually, you often see blue-white control with a bunch of triomes to enable Leyline Binding. So there's a little bit of natural like tension in the format there, and I suspect Leyline Binding is good enough that if it's a choice between do we play Leyline Binding or do we play Preordain, people are probably going to play Leyline Binding.
Right, awesome. Yeah, it does seem like it potentially can unlock a lot of cool new things in the modern format. Let's move on to let's go back a format now in terms of age. Let's talk about Legacy. So for the first time in 20 years, Mind's Desire has been unbanned. What could go wrong with unbanning a Storm payoff? Is this a similar sort of thing in terms of just card level has caught up? This card is one that, while very powerful and very splashy and very cool, is one that's kind of now fine, do you think? Is that kind of their thinking behind unbanning Mind Desire?
I suspect so. I mean, I think the real answer is we don't really know, because Mind's Desire has never existed in Legacy. It was banned something like 10 days after it was released.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, it was like the fastest banning in history or something. It was, so there's also a thing where, even if it's not great straight away, well, people don't really know how to build this deck because it's never existed. Mind's Desire existed in Standard and was quite good for a while. Or I think it was maybe Extended even, but it really was tearing things up for a while. But in the properly Eternal formats, it hasn't been legal in Legacy ever, really. So I think obviously people are going to try and break it. I think the High Tide Turnabout Mind's Desire deck seems pretty interesting. So I think the real upside of Mind's Desire, right, is that if you're playing another way to get ahead on cards in Storm, often you'll let them play all their rituals, their High Tide or whatever, and then you just try and counter a payoff.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that with Mind's Desire. If you put 6 copies of Mind's Desire on the stack, your 1 Force of Will looks kind of sad.
Oh yeah, believe me, I found that out in Commander the bad way. Like, okay, good. I only get like 7 of these. It's like, okay, great. I've made a mistake here.
Yeah. And I think there's some interesting, because a lot of lists I've been seeing have like Mind's Desire and then Time Spiral as the other sort of refill payoff card.
Yeah.
It's the 6 mana, draw 7, untap 6 lands. Obviously with High Tide, very powerful, getting that untap. And there's a bit of tension with, well, if their payoff is Time Spiral, then you want to like let the High Tide of Turnabout resolve and counter the spiral. But if you do that, then they have Mind's Desire instead. You just kind of lose. So, yeah, I think it's interesting. I suspect, like, looking at the decks that are great in Legacy now, there's a lot of Thoughtseize, there's a lot of grief.
Yeah.
It seems like kind of tough for, like, a pretty tough environment for that sort of deck. A lot of Thalia's around as well. They'll definitely want to keep an eye on.
No, that sounds awesome. And yeah, like just from a purely outsider point of view, one thing about everything you just listed off is that all those cards are blue. So I'm not going to say a budget Legacy deck, but if it ends up being a mono blue style of thing, that will be cheaper because it won't have any dual lands in it. So that could be quite nice.
That is good, yeah. I suspect you're still playing a bunch of fetch lands just to make Brainstorm better. But
yeah, it is still Legacy. I was,
yeah. Cheaper, not cheap. But yeah, I think overall with both of these, I quite like the approach they've taken in this BNR. I kind of suspect if they hadn't been on this like scheduled BNR thing where they have one every 3 months or whatever, they wouldn't be making changes right now in either of these formats. But I think both these changes are kind of interesting. They're both changes that I think if you're someone who plays these formats, these are changes that make you want to like take that dreaded step of opening Magic Online and brewing some decks, you know? I think these are the sort of changes you want to make that get people excited to play the formats. But don't, I think in either case, no deck is like invalidated by these changes, right? This doesn't really, there's not, I don't think, a tremendous amount of downside here, unless it turns out Mind's Desire is somehow completely broken. But it seems, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll find out. I guess that's kind of the fun part about it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Right, let's move on to our second bit of news. The MTGO Vintage Cube is out. James has been diving in to some gameplay, but similar to the last time it came out, there's been a bunch of changes. So we're going to go over. We're not going to go over all of them because there is actually quite a lot. We're going to kind of go over the ones that stick out to us. I think we started writing this in color order, but I'm not entirely sure how it went in the end. But let's start with some outs first. Yeah, we'll do the outs first and then talk about kind of what they've been replaced with afterwards, because there has even been like some like archetype changes as well, which is fairly big for a cube that like this, that is one of the most played cubes in all of Magic. So let's start off with white and we'll see how quickly this goes off the rails. So one of the first things that stuck out in white that's come out is White Plume Adventurer. This was the only initiative creature in the cube. This has come out. I think the reasoning for it was similar to another card we'll get to in a little bit, is that it wasn't super fun. It kind of preyed on fair decks a bit too much, which, James, what do you think about White Plume Adventurer coming out and also with it going the initiative?
Yeah, I get where they're coming from. This was, I don't think it's a controversial statement. This was the best white card in the cube by quite a lot, probably. It's very, you know, especially combining it with like Mox and stuff to get it out early. You know, if you're a combo deck, you can maybe beat that. But if you're like a blue good stuff deck and you're looking at your pile of removal spells, it doesn't matter if you kill the White Plume, really, unless you can get the initiative back very quickly. And that's really hard to do with White Plume Adventure. The untap, very relevant here as well. Yeah, I kind of get why they did it. It's a weird one because, you know, this is Vintage Cube. You're not cutting cards because they're too good, really. Like, we have Black Lotus and Solving and Ancestral Recall in this cube. Like, you can't really say, oh, White Plume Adventure is too good, it's got to go. I suspect there's a bit of a thing of people don't like losing that badly to the new cards as much, whereas if they get time walked, then they're like, yeah, fine, that happens. But yeah, I get the thing of it can be kind of a demoralizing play experience when when you're trying to sit there and interact and whatnot, and your opponent's just cycling through their initiative, and it comes down so early. I'm kind of surprised they went with White Bloom as their one initiative creature. I'd have been tempted to go have the 4-mana one instead.
Yeah, Seasoned Dungeoneer, like that's also I think the best white 4-drop. I rate that over Gideon, Ally, Zendikar, that kind of stuff. That card's phenomenal, and yeah, maybe swapping it in and out, but from the sounds of it, this was more of a fun gameplay type of thing, and maybe they just don't want the initiative at all. It's interesting because in my cube, which links to all these cubes and all the links we talk about will be down in the description below as well. But mine is as close a power level to this cube as you can get without running fast mana. That does kind of end up meaning it's a bit more creature based, and that's probably the initiative creatures have been super strong in mine. But maybe because mine is more creature-based, that means it's a bit fairer because it's likely, even in the control-y decks or in the slower decks, that you're going to have a creature that can at least contest the initiative. Whereas I get the feeling in the MTGO Vintage Cube, the control decks are going to be more board wipey-based or more planeswalker-based, that kind of thing. So just getting the initiative back, getting that value back is just way harder. It's much harder to contest it, basically.
Yeah, 100%. And it's just the thing of the fast mana is so good with the White Bloom. If White Bloom comes down even one turn early, it's really hard to catch up with that. Because that snowbally advantage just gets going so quickly, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think that's why it was banned in Legacy, because they were trying to get out on turn 1 or 2, basically. And that turns out initiative on turn 1 or turn 2, too good. Right, well, let's move on to our next white card now. Ravages of War is out. For those who don't know, this is effectively the second copy of Armageddon. It just destroys all your lands for 4 mana. I'm not super against this one, if I'm honest with you. I think mono white, especially in the last couple of years, has got stronger things to do. Admittedly, those things are White Bloom Adventurer and Seasoned Dungeoneer, which are not in the cube, but is this just Ravages of War as I just show its age a bit, James? Or
honestly, I always thought this card was super overrated. You can. So to be clear, Armageddon is still in. So it's just going from 2 Armageddons to 1 Geddon. But I always felt like this card was pretty overrated in White Weenie personally. When you go 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop Geddon, and your opponent doesn't have much going on, you'll win the game, absolutely. But you'll also win that game when you go 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop Gideon or Hero of Bladehold or whatever. And when you're not curving out, when you're not ahead, if your opponent dealt with your first couple of plays or they've got a powerful proactive draw of their own, then you just can't cast Armageddon. It doesn't do anything. Whereas a Gideon or a Hero, whatever other 4-drop you'd put in that spot would get you back in that game, maybe. Geddon's very all or nothing. I'm kind of fine with cutting it. You can also put it in your Crucible of Worlds-y type deck, but I found that to be quite a hard way to do it.
No, that's really not I've tried that in I have drafted that in a White Weenie deck and then was well, no, I'm not going to. Why would I play this instead of just a good 3-drop and a good 4-drop, that kind of thing? Just play more creatures, that kind of thing. There will be a card we get onto later, which is a fun, nice little combo with Ravages of War, but we still have Armageddon, but we'll get onto that in a little bit. One card that has also come out, so moving on to blue, is Thassa's Oracle. This one, again, from the notes we've had, seems to be also just a fun thing. Power level wise, this is up there with one of the best finishers going. James, what's your thoughts on Thassa's Oracle coming out?
So I'm kind of sad about it because I think it's quite a fun card, Thassa's Oracle. There's a lot of stuff you can do with it. Having said that, in Vintage Cube, you often didn't really need the Oracle. So clear, there's no demonic consultation or anything like that in Vintage Cube to just do the immediate 1-2 combo with. The way you were winning with Thassa's Oracle was mostly by brain freezing yourself. So, obviously in that spot, often you can just brain freeze your opponent, pass for turn, they draw and red draw step and die. But Fast Oracle was really nice that it gave you that sort of insurance against them having an Eldrazi that would shuffle back into their library, or just the it will let you not have to target them that additional time. And often I find that would actually be enough reason to main deck it. Like there are enough decks running around with those Eldrazi's, and it was a super strong sideboard card. And sometimes you could build a deck where you try and like combine the freeze with an in-hand Fast Oracle, or and do it that way. And you'd maybe get there over a couple of turns in a way that would be harder to do with targeting your opponent with a brain freeze. But yeah, I don't think it's like super impactful for the Storm deck, but I kind of wish they kept it just because it's like a very unique card, you know?
No, 100%. Yeah, I'm assuming like the 4-mana Jace that does the same thing when you have no library, you win the game. That I'm assuming that and Lab Maniac aren't in the cube anymore either, or whatever, like in basically.
I don't remember Ladman ever being in. That Jace, I feel like maybe they did the thing where it was printed, it went in for one iteration of Vintage Cube and immediately back out again. Yeah,
it's a new card. We have to give it a go.
Exactly.
But let's talk about another old card that's come out, which had a bit of like combo application primarily, which is Palinchron. This is the one that comes into play. You untap 7 lands, I think it is, equal to its casting cost, and then it has the ability for 2 blue to return it back to your hand. This was a combo with Sneak Attack, but it definitely could be one of these things where you're playing a card to make your good card better. I quite like Palinchron, but I can see just in terms of just general power creep, there might be better things to do with Sneak Attack and other style of combos like that, if there were any other combos actually with Palinchron that I'm missing. But yeah, are you sad about Palinchron coming out, or is this kind of just a needed change at some point?
Yeah, I think it's kind of its time has gone a bit. Palinchron, you just need quite a lot of lands for it to work. Like even if you have the Sneak Attack, right, it's 1 mana to get it into play, 4 mana to return it. So you need 6 lands in play before that's infinite mana. And then the other application of it was you'd have like a High Tide or a Heartbeat of Spring or whatnot, and you'd just be casting it and returning it. But again, that still needs a lot of lands. So I kind of felt like it was almost always pretty bad. It was also like those decks were absolutely heinous to play on Modo.
Yeah, I was just about to say
so much clicking.
So much clicking, that kind of like, yeah, take it out for that reason. That seems like one that's kind of fine in paper. You can demonstrate a loop, but just because it's on MTGO, and MTGO, although apparently has got better, it still handles like a calculator. Yeah, I can see what, just in terms of just quality of life improvement, let's get rid of this.
Yes, 100%. I have vivid memories of trying to play a cube deck where the whole win condition was Palinchron for infinite mana. Then you play you play Capsize with buyback a whole bunch of times to bounce all of their permanents.
Okay,
and then win with Palinchron beatdowns.
And all this happens before you run out of time. Is that the
no, it didn't.
Okay, good. Okay, fair.
Yeah, no, I think you could do it like you could do it in 1 game. I don't think you had outs to win 2 games, which is somewhat unfortunate.
Nice.
Given a best of 3 structure.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah. So there are a bunch more blue cards. I'm going to rattle these off actually, just because these kind of seem like all but one of them is kind of mid-rangey fairy cards, sort of, if that makes sense. But yeah, so Glenelendra Archmage is coming out, Muldrift has come out, Briffwing Cloudskate has come out, Consecrated Sphinx has come out. That's a cool one with the wheel deck, but there's Orcish Bowmaster exists now, so you can just play that. And also Bribery has come out, which personally I'm a fan of because Bribery sucks. Oh no, it's a very good card that's just miserable. What do you think about these outs to the rest of Blue, James?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing here is they are very willing to cut cards that have kind of just been in the cube forever.
Yeah.
And sort of just not being questioned. And I think it's probably a good call. Like, Consecrated Sphinx used to be like a early pick. It was a premium blue card, but really, really not true anymore. Like, 6 mana is just too slow for this sort of effect.
No, exactly. And like, with, I know Muldrifter is a very iconic card, but it's 2023. Like, you're running the most powerful cards in all of Magic in the most powerful color traditionally in the Vintage Cube. I love Muldrifter, but with Peace and Love, why? Like, yeah, it did a lot to last this long, I think.
But Daniel, have you ever ephemerated a Muldrifter?
Yeah, but now you can ephemerate like a Grief or a Fury or a Solitude, whatever it is, like all this type of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. I think these were probably all good cuts. I think Bribery and Glenlendra were both like still cards I would play, but definitely less premium than they used to be. The other 3, I think, have probably gone. But yeah, I think it's interesting. They're now like, I think these were kind of like sacred cows almost. Like, they just stay there forever, unquestioned. And I think it's probably good to see that being shaken up a little bit.
No, definitely. Yeah, the next bunch, I think, is where our color breaks down a little bit. But so a lot of these were additions in the last round of updates. They added a bunch of like sacrificey. They were trying out like an aristocratic package, but cards like Blood Artist, Bloodghast, Midnight Reaper, Woe Strider, the Meat Hut Massacre, Greater Gargadon, and Goblin Bombardment have all come out. So that is all your free sacrifice outlets and your pingers for like dealing damage, rewarding you for when you do the sacrificing. So they've all come out. So I'm assuming maybe either the feedback about aristocrats wasn't there, or people didn't like it, or it just wasn't strong enough. But either way, Red Black is having a whole change of identity in this update. How did you find the aristocrat deck when you played it last time around, James?
Yeah, it was an interesting one. I thought it was going to be really bad, to be honest. And I remember reading the article published with the last bunch of cube changes where these got added, where they kind of said this is maybe only here for one season. We're just trying stuff out, yada yada. So I went in with very low expectations of this deck, but it actually played incredibly well. I think this was probably like comfortably my winningest archetype last cube season.
Really?
Was the Rakdos Sack deck. Yeah. It's and to be clear, when I say Rakdos Sack, I'm not talking about really all-in sacrificey stuff. I'm talking about like a red-black aggressive deck with hand disruption and removal and cheap aggressive creatures. But a lot of your cheap aggressive creatures coincidentally make multiple bodies. Like Rabbleman's fantastic here, like Bitter Blossom's really good, all this stuff. And then you just have a couple of sack outlets, like Goblin Bombardment's great, kills them. Yawgmoth's kind of a best one, that's still in, obviously less supported now. And then you kill them with like that and Mayhem Devil or a Blood Artist. And it actually played really well. Like, I'm not saying like, this is the best deck in Cube. It won a lot, I think, because it was really underdrafted. People didn't rate those cards very highly. But I think the deck actually worked really well. So I was kind of surprised and a little bit disappointed that it came out. Kind of hope to see that one back in at some point.
No, that's fair. Yeah, I think one thing that I think we're kind of learning with this is that they are willing to try new things. Like these cubes are about like every 3 months, is it? That kind of thing. Trying something new, keeping it fresh all the time in a way that isn't just play the new card, like force the newest cards in, is interesting and will make it like more replayable. And also, as we saw in the last round just after Christmas, I think it was, or maybe it's the spring. God knows how long or short this year has been so far. But like they kept on making changes while it was up as well. So it doesn't mean some of these might not come back in. And it doesn't mean there might not be more changes. But yeah, it's good to see that they're kind of actively supporting it and listening to feedback now. We have a couple more outs before we get to the ins. Green has had a bit of a big change. Plow Under is gone, probably showing its age again. Terrastodon is out, and so's Worldly Tutor. So with the last update, we saw a lot of what they were trying to do, and we spoke about this a bit on our video last week where we do a whole deep dive into mono green in Cube. But the way they had seemed to have changed mono green was just add a bunch more tutors. They've cut some of them with this. There's a few others that we're not mentioning that that's also come out. But how did you find the changes in mono green in the last round of Cube, James?
Yeah, I didn't really think the tutors did a lot, to be honest. Worldy tutor, I'd probably consider if I had exactly channel, because you'll really want to combine that with like a particular creature. Like if you have a channel and one Emrakul as your payoff, then you might play a worldy tutor to go and get it. But outside of that, I thought the card was pretty bad, honestly. I'd rather just play like another expensive payoff creature rather than trying to go and find it with a worldy tutor, because it just, you top deck it and you have to wait a turn to draw it, and you're just down a card when you do. Plow Under, I was a little surprised by. Like it is still very powerful if you can get it out early, but obviously like it doesn't do anything when you're behind. So I get it. Maybe this was also the thing of trying to cut cards that aren't fun to play against as well. But honestly, I think stuff like Plow Under, I kind of feel like if you're going to get mad when your opponent like Plow Unders you on turn 2, like maybe Vintage Cube isn't the format for you. I don't know. Like
it's the one format you could, or it was the one format you could still play Plow Under.
Exactly.
And now they're taking it from us.
Like I think if you're in for Vintage Cube, you've got to like be willing to live with the fact that like busted stuff can happen, and sometimes you don't get to play a fair game of Magic. I think there's. You can go and draft Lords of Rings, and none of those things will happen to you, and you'll have a great time. If you're in for Vintage Cube, I think you're accepting getting Plow Undered sometimes.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. Yeah. As we spoke about last week, there are definitely some issues with mono green, and when we get to the editions, maybe we'll see some stuff that they've added to kind of spice it up a little bit. The last set of outs, and we'll move over to the ins while we're talking about them, is that the signets have come out and they've been swapped for the talismans. I'm generally a big fan of this change. I made this in my own cube probably about basically when they completed the cycle, I think in like Modern Horizons 1, I think it was. I just generally found the talismans to be better specifically for cube. There's definitely an argument of power level, which one is just raw power. The signets definitely help you filter into 5 colors a bit easier, but the fact that the talismans come down on 2 and you can still tap for a mana on the turn they come down is good. And the fact that they ping you for a damage when you tap them for a color is nice. It specifically in like lower powered level cubes, it means that kind of the greedy decks are paying life for their splashing, meaning that like aggro decks have a bit more of a chance because they're naturally lowering their life total. So in cube in general, I like talismans for those reasons. What do you think, James? What's your take on the signets outs and talismans in? Are you furious? Are you or are you just? It's fine.
I'm outraged, Daniel. I'm outraged. I'm going to write to Wizards of the Coast immediately. No, this I think this is a pretty good change. I think they're also just like a little bit nicer to play with in terms of sometimes signets can be a little bit unintuitive and they make you like think about your mana a little bit more in terms of like how you sequence things, and in a way which I suspect most people just don't want to have to think about it. Stuff like, so for example, if I want to play like a Llanowar Elf and I have a Spell Pierce and I have a Simic Signet and a land, I can't play my Llanowar Elf and hold up my Spell Pierce, right?
Yeah.
Because I have to use up my 2 mana now to have to pay to tap my land, tap my Signet. Whereas talismans, just you don't end up in those situations, right? And I suspect that's just like not really like a fun limitation to have in a lot of the games. It's a bit of a like a got you thing. And I'm frankly just sick of watching people like sit there tapping and untapping their signets on Modo because they did it wrong.
They did it in the wrong order or something.
Yeah. Like using a signet to play for another signet is also really annoying to do on Modo. So no, I think this is a fine change. Talismans, I think, are like a little bit more powerful. Like seeing as obviously once in a while they will fix you for that extra color, but I think in general the talisman being able to play it with 2 mana and use that extra mana that turn immediately is a bigger upside.
Cool. Yeah. So let's talk about some more ins now. So yeah, there's a bunch of stuff coming in. We're going to pick up the ones we like. So Leyline Binding has come in. This is one that I'm actually thinking about adding to mine just to kind of help out the 5-color decks. This is obviously it's the Oblivion Ring effect that's reduced in cost. The number of different types of lands you control. So like it has the domain cost reduction. So yeah, it's a nice little reward for the 5-color deck. What do you think about Leyline Binding, James?
Yeah, I think this is a really good ad actually. The 5-color deck, you almost always fall behind early because you're playing a bunch of tap lands. So having access to a really flexible piece of interaction that's really, really efficient for you. It can pretty easily with triumphs cost 1 mana even on turn 2. Often it'll cost 2 mana on turn 2. And crucially, it's a piece of interaction that no one else wants because if you're a 2-color deck, this costs 4 mana, you're not interested in it. I think that's a nice little inclusion, actually. I think the 4 and 5-color decks want this a lot more than they want like another splashy 4 or 5-color payoff, you know?
Yeah, no, 100%. All right, moving on to, for me anyway, the best change in this whole list. They are adding in my crab boy, Hard Evidence. I did a whole video about why people should run Hard Evidence in Cube. I like to think that Ryan Spain's a fan, if I'm completely honest with you. Yeah, I love Hard Evidence. For those who don't know, it is a single blue for a sorcery, I'm going to say. It makes you a 0/3 crab and you investigate. This is just a really solid thing for kind of any control or mid-rangey decks, and also goes in things like artifact decks as well. I love Hard Evidence. I think it's a great card. The fact it's a spell as well. It'll trigger all your Pyromancers, even though I think Young Pyromancers actually come out. Let's not worry about that. But yeah, I love Hard Evidence. James, I will concede power level wise. Mine is slightly less. Do you think Hard Evidence will cut it in the Vintage Cube?
I don't want to say no. I don't want to
good man.
crush your dreams. No, it's got some cool upside. I like the extra artifact for the Academy decks. I think the Academy decks are really good at the moment. And you've got actual Young Pyromancer I think is gone, but we have a bunch of way better Young Pyromancers that make artifacts.
That's true.
We have like Saheeli, the hybrid mana one that makes servo and you cast non-creature spell. We have Third Path Iconoclast. We have Chrome Host Seed Shark.
Awesome. Yeah.
So having like these extra little spells in your to combine with those, you'll have a ton of artifacts really quickly. It replaces itself. Like, I mean, the downside is right. It's kind of 3 mana to draw a card. But
yes, in a format where Ancestral is in it. But yes, I do get that.
Yeah.
But you don't get that 0/3 crab. Very important.
That is true. A big drawback of Ancestral Recall, I felt. Really lacking in 0/3 crabs.
Lack of crab, yeah. Nice. So another card that they've added is Flash. This is a way of cheating something into play. It will normally die straight away unless you effectively pay for the spell. There's got to be some good application for this, James. There's a ton of stuff I can think of initially, but what are you thinking with this?
Yeah, so it's a powerful card. People who not played it before, you're trying to abuse Flash. You're not trying to pay for that trigger. You're trying to put in a creature with such a powerful ETB or death effect that just putting it into play and sacrificing it immediately is good for you. Like one that springs to mind in the Vintage Cube is Ashen Rider, which is ETB or die, you exile one of their permanents. I think that's kind of the best one maybe in Vintage Cube though, and that doesn't like immediately win the game. So I think
sorry to just jump in there, but they have specifically added in Worldspine Worm, Triplicate Titan, and Titan of Industry. That's only enter the battlefield, but yeah, Worldspine Worm and Triplicate Titan both get stuff when they die, which I think is...
Worldspine Worm, Triplicate... Okay, yeah, that's an excellent point. Yeah, I think that makes it a lot more interesting. And I did see those cards back, and I was like, why have they added Triplicate Titan? That makes loads of sense now. Okay, yeah, no, I could see it then.
I guess that like the truly base level for this, just in a reanimator deck, is this puts your thing into play. You might get the ETB value of a creature straight away, and it is 2 mana to put something from your hand into the graveyard via the battlefield. Like that is a worst case scenario. I think its applications could be very niche, but when they come up and when you do the thing, I think it will be very powerful.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting because it's also good in a sneak attack deck potentially, right? Because sneak attack is also sacrifice at the end of turn, not exile. Like for example, like corpse stands or something. Those same creatures will be good to sneak attack as the creatures that are good to
that's true.
flash. And obviously, flash just lets you do that way earlier in the game. Like you're way more excited about your Worldspine Worm flash opening hand than your Worldspine Worm sneak attack hand. Like, yes, sneak attack will give you that attack straight away, but flash you're going to do on turn 2, and it's going to be phenomenal. Yeah, okay, I'm pretty high on the card then. Actually, that sounds pretty interesting.
That sounds quite spicy. Yeah. I guess with one hand they've taken Palinchron, the other hand they've given us flash. One is 2 mana, so
that sounds way cool. Better.
Yeah, let's give that a go. This is where we kind of break the order a little bit, because these kind of cards kind of go together a little bit. So some more ins. We have Torrential Gearhulk, we have Magma Opus, and we have Mizzix Mastery. I know you have a bit of a soft spot for the Gearhulk and the Opus especially, but how do you see these playing out? Do you like these coming in?
Yeah, I think this is pretty cool. So Magma Opus, for those who don't know it, is 8 mana sorcery, you instant, sorry. Deal 4 damage, split up, you draw 2 cards, you make a 4/4, does a lot of powerful things. But you can pay 2 mana to discard it from your hand and make a treasure. So there's a nice little nut draw here of turn 2, assuming you don't have a Mox, you discard the Opus, and then you just crack the treasure to Mizzix Mastery it back on turn 3. And that'll kind of often just be enough on its own. Also combines really well with Torrential Gearhulk. Torrential Gearhulk is just a fine card. Mizzix Mastery potentially has outs to be good in Storm as well. Maybe you do a setup turn when you freeze yourself, and then you cast some red rituals and overload a Mizzix Mastery. Sounds kind of interesting. Yeah, I think this is an interesting inclusion. I'm not saying it'll 100% be great, but I think it's definitely something I'll try and draft.
Yeah, definitely. It's one thing I always struggle with is finding an archetype to get drafters to draft specifically. Is it this might be that archetype in the Vintage Cube, because in the Vintage Cube you have the issue of everyone wants to be in blue, meaning that the issue is a lot of the blue cards get kind of taken up. With this, in theory, not many other decks are going to want Magma Opus, and not many are going to want Mizzix's Mastery as much. So maybe it kind of opens the door for that a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. I think often in this sort of power level of cube, you're not really pushing people into a particular color combination with here's this sort of broad-ranging synergy deck,
that's very true,
or whatever. Where it's you need a whole bunch of spots. It's more here's a little package of stuff that works really well if you can combine it, and you're just putting it in a deck with good cards.
No, that makes sense. Talking of good cards, we're going to keep the conversation on this a little bit short, because I feel like I've been talking about this card constantly for about a month and a half now. Orcish Bowmasters is in. It's a good card. We know what it does. Very strong card. There is the Wheels deck in that cube. There is Time Twister, Wheel of Fortune, that kind of stuff. It'll be a good card, and it'll also just be good in fair decks as well, because its Orcish Bowmasters is very strong.
I agree. We have talked about Orcish Bowmasters enough for many months.
Cool. But let's move on to some definitely less powerful, but more interesting, at least. So with the reduction to the sacrifice theme in Red-Black, the black portion of that has been replaced with mono-black aggro. Unfortunately, there's no Carnophage or Vampire Lacerator. They have added in Tenacious Underdog, which I do actually quite like as a creature, and also Evolved Sleeper. That's the mono-black level up one. I'm going to hot take this now and say this is not going to be strong enough and will probably get changed again. mono black aggro does tend to be like the default when you haven't really got something specifically for mono black. And I agree, mono black is a tricky one to find something for it to do, for it to find an identity, because it is just black in general is like the best like support color. Do you think this is strong enough to make a splash, James, or are we kind of on the same wavelength there?
You see, with the Rakdos stuff being cut, I was like, oh, that's a shame, but maybe they bring in something else that's good. If they did figure out something else good, that's fine. But cutting it for mono black aggro, like, come on, like, I think Evolved Sleeper has like gone into the cube about 5 times and never lasted more than 1 season because it's just not a vintage cube power level of card. Like, your opponent sat over there casting their Griefs and their White Plume Adventurers and their Ancestral Recalls and their Time Walks. You're like, oh, look at my Evolved Sleeper on turn 1, guys. I can like level it up a couple of times. Great. Yeah, these are not real cards you're ever going to play. I guess like you could play an underdog if you like just need some bodies or whatever, but Evolved Sleeper is just not a playable, I don't think. Yeah, there's been mono black in before as like mono black aggro as an archetype. It's always sucked. I don't really know why it would not suck this time.
Trust me, for all the Vintage Cube players listening out there is hope on the horizon, and it is when the Warhammer cards are printed into MTGO. We've personally found that the red-black kind of artifact aggro deck has been quite powerful. That runs a lot of Warhammer cards. I can see they're kind of teasing it a little bit. Like we've had things like in this update, you have things like Rabbit Battery, you have Goldspan Dragon, which spits out a ton of artifacts. You have Pier and Kier and La, and also makes artifacts, as well as Blood Tithe Harvester, which also makes artifacts and is a good aggressive creature. I think this is a stopgap when the Warhammer cards come online. I think basically just add Chaos Defiler and a bunch of other cool cards like that, and then Black will have something cool to do. But this is they've gone to the default, and it's as close as you can get to Carnifex, basically. But
yeah, pretty much. I just don't know why they couldn't leave me with my Blood Artist for one more cube season, before it was up. I'd have been fine with that.
No, definitely fair. All right, let's move on to green now. And this has had a fair bit of an update, as we mentioned. Some of the tutors they brought in last time, some of the big creatures have come out because they're kind of leaning into the lands package again. I think we spoke about this when we did the update with Josh. So Field of the Dead was out before, now it's come back in. Exploration has come in. Light from the Loam, I think that went out last time, is now back in. And so is Titania, Protector of Argoth, the one that when you sacrifice lands, you make a 5/3. What do you think about this, James? Like, I always quite like the lands deck. I think the tricky part of it is always people have cottoned on to drafting your lands as a good thing. So it makes the 4 or 5 color deck, like lands deck specifically, a little bit harder. What do you think about these? Do you think this could make a decent enough change?
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly going to draft some of this. I quite enjoy drafting the lands decks. They're definitely not like the most powerful thing you can be doing in the cube. Like, you can definitely have success with these, you can trophy with these, but it is a deck where you kind of need it all to come together. Because you need to be taking those fetch lands really highly. And that means you need to be paying real attention to like what wheels. You definitely don't want to be fighting anyone for this. Like if Crucible of Worlds doesn't wheel, you just shouldn't be in the deck, for example. But I think these are good changes to it. Exploration was exactly the card this deck needs, because you just can't be all about like hoping you have fast bond in your opening hand. And if you don't have an exploration effect, then you can have all the Crucible like value stuff you like. It's just not going to matter because your opponent's going to be doing things quicker than you are. I think Titania is a really good ad as well. That's like a really quick way to close the door. It creates a bunch of 5/3s when your lands die. I like these changes. Like, I don't think they're super powerful, but I think they're fun cards to play with, and like you can make them work. They're not evolved sleeper.
No, definitely. I've just hastily added one card to the list because I forgot to add it earlier. So this is one we also missed when doing our Lord of the Rings set review, and I think might go in that deck because it does seem quite good with the Fast Bond style of deck. Do you know what Sail into the West does, James? Would you like me to read it to you?
I do know. I've already cast it. In fact,
nice. What did you think about? So I will read it out for the viewers just because we're talking about. Effectively, so it's 2 green and a blue for an instant. It has Will of the Council, which means there's some voting involved, but effectively, the one you can always get because it's the one that is if the vote is tied or gets the most votes, which in a 2-player format you can do quite easily, is effectively each player may discard their hand and draw 7 cards. So this is a pretty solid wheel at instant speed, which seems quite good in the lands deck. What do you think about Sail into the West, James?
I think it's cool. It's so I was quite disappointed the first time I put it on the stack because I had my Shieldred in play. They were on 10 or something. I was ready to kill them. I cast my Sail into the West, and then it popped up presumably on their screen with the "Would you like to discard your hand and draw 7 cards?" Because it is a May.
Oh, it's a May,
and they correctly clicked no and didn't die. So I think for that reason, because it's a May, it is not a card for the quote-unquote wheels deck, the Shieldred, like Leovold, Narset, Hull Breacher, if you're playing that, there isn't in Myth Cube. But it can still be a fine card, for example, in like a Storm deck that's touching green, maybe for like Fast Bond and stuff, Fences and early. Like an instant speed wheel is fundamentally very powerful.
Definitely,
because you get to go and you wheel in your opponent's end step and you get to use the cards first. And it's not like, giving them the option to not wheel is like, well, you still got a wheel. That's still like generally really good for you. It just
you're still
means
playing all your hand out. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you like emptied your hand and drew 7 and they elected not to draw 7, that would be phenomenal for you. But it does just mean it doesn't quite work the way you want in that, like, that tries to combine wheels with a Punisher effect.
Yeah, specifically the wheel deck. But actually, I kind of... Cube slots are, like, getting a card into a guild section, especially for a cube, is going to be difficult because you can only have so many of them. And obviously, you want them to go in as many decks as possible. But I kind of... So I'm thinking about my own cube where I'm trying out, like, Flash. I quite like Sail into the West in maybe, like, the Flash kind of deck because, like, doing that with, like, a Wilderness Reclamation out, getting a load of Flash creatures that you can then cast again seems quite... I quite like that. So that's definitely one we missed during the set review, which is one of the reasons that I wanted to touch on it now. But I do quite like that card. Let's move on to some more multicolored cards, and one that I think is super broken. The few times I've played it, I thought it's been very good. They've added 4th Aelingus. Have you played with this card yet, James? Or have you seen it been played?
Yes, I've not actually got to cast it yet, but I've played against it a few times, and it's very, very strong. Like, it ranges from just take the initiative early to, like, I have 7 mana and I win the game now.
Yeah. No, that's an awesome card. Yeah, I'm glad to see that in. It definitely deserves to be in. We also have Fire Covenant. This is a bit of a interesting one. So I'm going to read this one because this one isn't one that people will immediately jump out to people. So Fire Covenant is 1 black and a red for an instant. As initial cost to cast a spell, pay X life. Fire Covenant deals X damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures. So I'm not 100% sure what this does in the Vintage Cube in its current form. I've seen this in other cubes where people are trying to do like a Death Shadow thing in Rakdos, which is quite fun because this is a cool way of just getting your life total down while also answering something on the board. What does this doesn't go to the face? What does this do in the Vintage Cube, James?
Oh, it just kills all our creatures.
Any number of targets, yeah, okay. Yeah, okay.
It's, so I think the card I'd kind of compare it to, obviously the very different colour, is like Parallax Wave. Okay. It does the thing of, like, you're fairly even on board, you both have a board presence, you draw this, you kill all their creatures and kill them over 1 to 2 turns. Like, obviously as for downside, like, it's not very good against mono red specifically. But against kind of all the other creature decks, I think this is really strong, actually. Like, it's just so swingy, and unless they're red, you can be pretty aggressive with paying. Like, you can just, if you're on 20, you can just pay 15 life, kill their really built-out board, and you're often going to be able to convert from that. I think this card's pretty strong, actually.
No, that's cool. No, yeah. It came out in Ice Age is not one I've had a chance to really like. I've seen it playing Canlander and stuff, and I'm assuming for a similar reason. But okay, I'll keep an eye on that one. That doesn't seem quite interesting. Right, next up we have effectively, as far as I'm aware, these are in for a similar reason. We have Zerda the Dawnmaker and Kinnan Bond of Prodigy. Effectively, these make you infinite mana with things like Basalt Monolith and Grim Monolith. They'll have other utility, like technically you can Companion Zerda, let's go, I want to see that happen in the Vintage Cube, and Kinnan will buff up the amount of mana that your mana dorks can make, which could be quite cool. But I'm assuming these are effectively in as ways of making infinite mana chains. Would you concur, or do you think there's like more place than that?
I think that's part of what you're in it for, but I think Kinnan particularly has that's not the only reason you'll play it. I'm kind of thinking about the decks with like a bunch of Mana Rocks and Tolarian Academy and going off with like Paradoxical Outcome and stuff. Like specifically, this is phenomenal with Urza, right? Every artifact now taps for 2 mana.
That's pretty strong, yeah.
Yeah. I think with some of the other ads as well, like they added Mox Opal, I think there's some applications there, and Kinnan also does give you a thing to do with that mana. Like, it's not great, the activated ability, but you're very liable in these decks to have access to 15 mana and nothing to do with it. That's definitely a thing that can happen, and giving you something to do with that is pretty nice. I don't think you can really Companion Zerda, sadly. I really want to, but I'm just thinking about, like, in your cube, where we play with Companions as written, right? You don't have to pay the extra to open your hand. And it's still kind of a bit too difficult to Companion Zerda. I think when you have to play the extra 3, it's realistically just not going to be worth it. But
no, I know.
I think this is a cool addition, but I like this.
No, definitely. Right, we're moving on to artifacts now. Yeah, we mentioned Mox Opal going in. This just seems like a pretty solid. The cube is full of fast mana. Let's chuck in some more. To the surprise of no one, the One Ring has come in that seemed like pretty much a slam dunk. Similar to Orcish Bowmasters, good card, play good card. Mystic Forge, I think, is a bit more interesting. This is the one that you may look at the top card of your library at any time, and you may cast artifact spells and colorless spells on top of your library, and you can tap it to pay 1 life to exile the top card of your library. So, is it Future Sight? This is kind of like the colorless version of Future Sight, isn't it? I really like these effects. I'm actually on the verge of adding the Reality Chip to mine, which does something similar, just because these seem quite cool and quite fun. Is there enough colorless and artifact spells for this to be good right now, would you say? Like, are they trying to make workshops more of a thing, for example? Like, where do you see the home for this, and do you think it'll do work?
So I think this is a sort of card where, it's going to go 15th pick quite a lot. But when you're in that deck that does want it, it'll be really cool. And potentially very powerful. Because if, obviously, this doesn't actually happen very much, but in a world where your deck was all artifacts, this is actually way better than a Future Sight, right? Because you get to clear the top card on just for tapping. It's really hard to end up there. You need a lot of artifacts, and it's pretty hard to do. I think it's probably bad, but I kind of want to draft it. I don't know. You can do some cool stuff with Sensei's Divining Top, which can just put itself back on tap when you pay it. So you basically pay a mana, draw a card. Yeah, I think it's sweet.
No, that's quite cool. And there's also definitely a thing with cube design that I kind of find like you start off trying to make everything synergize with everything, and kind of the more you go the more time you spend kind of building your cube or kind of putting things together, the more that kind of you actually putting in rewards for people who are full in on an archetype you want to support is quite nice. Like you can, this is the reward for someone who has gone ham on artifacts, and their deck is like at least half. I would say you want this to be good, but yeah, it's a reward for them, and all power to them, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, you won't play it that often, but when you do, you'll be like, oh, I had this sick Mystic Forge deck.
Yeah.
And it was yeah, I'm kind of all about those cards. I think that's a good place to be.
No, definitely. And then our last couple of ins, they've added in Urza Lord Protector and the Might Stone and the Weak Stone, which meld. I think that's the mechanic. They meld into Urza Planeswalker, which will just win you the game, effectively. This is cool. I think we said this at the time when we did the set review for this. It's super unlikely to happen. Like the combination of getting them, like it's the combination of both seeing these, because the MTGO Vintage Cube is a 540 cube, so you have to open both of them. You then have to draft both of them, and then you have to have them both out in your deck. For me, this seems like one put in for like specifically like someone like LSV to do on stream once, and then they take it out. It's cool. Don't get me wrong. It's super cool if you can do it, but the chances of you doing it, I think, are so unbelievably slim. Like unless you are going for it, like unless you're like tinkering for the Might Stone and the Weak Stone, potentially, like this is going to be super difficult to do. Is kind of my hot take on this pair of cards coming in.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. And like, even when you get them in play, you have to pay 7 mana to meld them.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
So you need a channel as well as the tinker, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and they're both like pretty weak, to be honest. Individually, I mean, they're not like unplayably bad, but they're just like there's better versions of these effects, right? Like if you want a thing to workshop out early, there's better things to do. Urza, like theoretically, this effect could be good in that like Academy Stormy deck, but for example, if you look at Helm of Awakening, they're just 2 mana, all spells cost 1 less. Like, sure, it's like symmetrical and it's risky, but that's such a more powerful effect, and it comes down cheaper. And those decks never want to play white anyway. I think that's actually a big issue with Urza. It's just the artifact decks are so rarely white that I don't really know when you're going to be playing this card.
No, exactly. I guess it's worth mentioning that there are actually 2 of these. Actually, did Helm of the Host come in as well?
It's Helm of Awakening.
Helm of Awakening. Okay. But what would you call it? Foundry Inspector has also come in. So maybe they are trying to do something like with cost reduction of artifacts. Like, actually, yeah, they specifically mentioned this with Mishra's Workshop and Divining Top, Mystic Forge, and Paradoxical Outcome.
Ooh, that's spicy. Okay.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah, so this Mystic Forge top is draw your deck, right?
Yes. Yeah, because artifacts cost 1 less. So
yeah.
That's interesting. That's quite cool.
Yeah.
If only there was Thassa's Oracle in there to...
Exactly. Why won't they give us the fun things? Yeah,
that's quite spicy, but yeah.
It is spicy. I'm kind of in for that. I want to see it happen.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
I feel like you're going to do it once and go 1-2, but you'll have a good time.
No, definitely. But yeah, so in general, there's a fair amount of updates, and I think we're kind of on board with most of them. I think like the main ones that I personally kind of would disagree with have been taken out for fun, and that's very subjective. People can do what they want to do. I guess like the designers of the cube are actively listening to feedback. They are making changes while it's going on. So yeah, I'm genuinely looking forward to seeing what they do next. James, you've actually played some games already of the Vintage Cube. How have you found it? Have the changes made that much of a difference? What do you think of the cube in its current iteration?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about there's like close to 100 changes, right? It does feel like quite a new format. And I'm quite in for them just making a lot of changes each time. It kind of feels like a meaningfully new format each time the cube goes up now, in opposed to, it's Vintage Cube with like 15 cards from a new set. Which is just nice because it means like you have a new thing to solve, you know? Like, we'll have worked out a bunch of stuff that's good or not good by the end of the cube being up in a couple of weeks, but we don't know about now. And that seems like a good place to be.
No, 100%. Yeah. It makes me wish that I liked MTGO, but again, this is the world we live in. Maybe I'll watch you and Josh battle it out in your league again. Oh, actually, how is it going with you and Fire Truck?
Well, it's only been up for a day. Currently, I'm 1-0 up. But,
okay, let's go.
Yeah, it normally ends up with Josh gets a healthy lead that I track him back later in the format. I think Josh won like 20-19 or something daft last season.
Okay, that's some immense magic, lads. Well done. All right, let's move on to our next section of the day. So, we are going to be talking about the roadmap for the next, I think it's like almost 3 years of Magic that was spoiled at Gen Con about a week ago at time of recording. They spoiled and have spoken about a lot of stuff. So we're basically going to be recapping some of this, giving our thoughts on it. We might as well just kick off. So in September, Wilds of Eldraine is coming out. This is a standard set. Spoilers already started. Expect a cube set review when that comes out. I actually also have I also get a spoiler card for this, which is quite spicy. The first time we've got that. Check out the Too Sweet MTG YouTube channel on Tuesday if you want to see our spoiler card. It's very fancy. It's very nice. But with the Wilds of Eldraine, this is the first set in the new 3-year story arc. The way they described it was that this is the aftermath of March of the Machine, which is different to March of the Machine Aftermath, which was a small limited print run bunch of cards. But yeah, so basically over the next 3 years, we're going to be seeing how the events of March of the Machine has affected the multiverse. I think kind of the gist is that in general, over the next couple of years, we're only going to be seeing one Planeswalker set, which is quite interesting. I think they've confirmed that. And there are Omen Paths now. This is going to be a recurring thing where effectively, legendary creatures can use Omen Paths to Planeswalk. It's basically, there's a lot of cool stuff coming over the next couple of years, and it's basically going to be like cool and interesting team-ups. Like your favorite characters are now no longer stuck on their individual planes. They can go and travel and see other people, and it seems like quite a good like story mechanic anyway of like getting like crossovers and team ups and kind of like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if like Tybalt did something with this guy, or with like Thibblethip or something like that. I'm hoping they're both not from the same plane, and I've just put two people together who already knew each other. But yeah, so Wilds of Eldraine is the next set. At the end of the year in Q4, we have Lost Caverns of Ixalan. So this is a set on Ixalan, but it's all new mechanics. So there will be dinosaurs and vampires, but it's kind of like an unexplored realm. Basically, there's like a underground. It's kind of like Journey to Synth the Earth type thing. There's like a land below Ixalan, which is bursting free and doing something to Ixalan. What do you think about going back to Ixalan, James? Did you like the first set? Are you excited to go back?
So I'm one of those Magic players who really could not be more ignorant of the lore. Like it needs to be, it really needs to be like shoved down my throat by the cards, you know? Like I know the Phyrexians were about, I'd got that. They're not very nice. That had gone in. But I think it is important, right, that like I think the good Magic sets when they work is like you can't help but know the storyline, right?
Yeah,
like
definitely.
Just by playing the cards, that conveys the storyline. And I think some of the sets have done that really well. Some of them haven't. I think like ones like Ixalan, where we just like go to a plane for one set and like there's some dinosaurs. I don't know, like I couldn't tell you one thing that happened on Ixalan.
Jason Veraska. Oh my god.
Oh, we have Pirate Chase.
Yeah, Pirate Chase, sexy Pirate Chase.
Yeah, that was sexy Chase set. Yeah, okay. But where's I think the sets where it worked really well, like you know, like when they had like all the clues that it's like, oh, Emrakul's coming on the inside set. That's like, I cannot fail to notice that, even though I'm not paying any attention to the lore. And I feel like a lot of these sets where we just like go to a plane for one set, and it's like, oh, cool, look at the dinosaurs. It's like they don't really get across the story very well often. But maybe that's fine. Like, you're just there for like the flavor. It's like cool dinosaurs, definitely. And that's okay.
And that makes sense. Like, as we get through some, like, there's definitely some more like esoteric and more like some of the sets we're going to be getting to later on in this conversation are way more out there. I don't know if you've had a chance to have a look at them, but yeah, we'll go through them together. But while we're still on Ixalan, they have announced that they are doing things called special guests, which effectively these are additional high-value reprints that are being added to the list and are available in like collector boosters and set boosters. It sounds like this is effectively what they're doing for sets that don't have a mystical archive, but it is in addition to what we're already getting more. If they are like expensive reprints, more is always more, I guess.
So how is this different from like a bonus sheet?
So this wasn't fully explained. More details will come out close to the time, but basically these are not in draft boosters.
Okay.
So you're not playing these. These aren't like the mystical archives that you can kind of like play at like pre-release and stuff. These are like similar to the list. It's like another sheet of the list, I think. I'm assuming they'll be like, they will come out with a mathematical explanation in terms of like how likely you are to open. But effectively, it's like, I think like collector boosters and set boosters will have another possibility of a list slot, which will be in like, they haven't said what the spicy reprints are, but they've said like, I think they specifically used I don't want to misquote them, but the gist I got was like decent to high value reprints. I doubt it'll be things like, not contraptions. What was the shiny things in Kaladesh and like Return to Zendikar, like and Battle for Zendikar, that kind of stuff.
Masterpieces?
Yes, yeah. I doubt it'll be masterpieces, but I don't know. I mean, it could, but like I doubt it'll be reprints of masterpieces, but who knows? We'll find out. Like basically, even if it's just the chance of opening a fetch land in random booster packs, I'm kind of here for. So more is always more.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
And then the other thing they are doing with Lost Caverns of Ixalan is, this kind of writes itself, but they're doing a tie-in with Jurassic Park. So this is going to be similar to like when we saw the Transformers cards in Brothers War, I think it was. They're going to be, some of these will be mechanically unique. So like the T-Rex from Jurassic Park will be its own creature with its own specific card. And these will just be available in like booster packs, which is quite good. Like I generally found the Transformers cards they did to be relatively easy to come by. I hope, like, I don't know how much money they have to pay him, but I want a card that is Jeff Goldblum with his shirt open lying on a bed. I'm a happily married man, but that's still something I want.
I mean, there's always Photoshop, Daniel.
Oh, yes.
Okay, that's interesting, though. They're doing the Jurassic Park at the same time. I'm curious, there's I think you're maybe slightly more invested in like the story and stuff than I am. Do you think when they do the like crossover stuff to other IPs, do you think that like detracts from the Magic storyline, or do you think it's just a fine additional thing they can do?
So, if I'm honest, I think this will be the first set where people will properly know about it, because like when we in Ikoria, when we had the Godzilla ones, I think everyone was. I was fine with that because they were just alternate arts for cards in the set. The first time we saw this was the Transformers cards in Brothers War, and if I'm honest with you, they didn't really do a great explanation. They didn't really do a great job of explaining to people that this was a thing. I had no idea about this until I opened some booster packs and got like a Megatron. So, if I'm honest, I'm going to see how I feel about it kind of after this comes out, because like I'm assuming these won't. I don't think these are going to be in draft boosters packs either, because I don't remember if I don't think like the Transformers cards were in Brothers War packs or anything like that. I think they were just in set boosters and collector boosters. They're just like another weird thing that you can open in these things. So if I'm honest with you, when I get one, I'll probably be fine with it if it's cool. Like if it's a cool, interesting card, similar to the Transformers ones, I don't want them to be super good. I want them to be interesting commander cards that are not broken or super expensive. I don't think any of the Transformers ones are like, some of them are quite cool. There's some very cool ones in there, but none of them are stupidly expensive, which is kind of the safe level for these. If Jeff Goldblum becomes a legacy staple, then there's a problem. But that's a road we'll cross, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. And so I think a lot of the issue people had when they did the first bunch of mechanically unique things as a secret lair from a different
yes,
IP
100%, yeah.
was so it was a secret lair and obviously very short spite. And I think there was also an issue that they couldn't reprint that card mechanically in a Magic form. Whereas I think when they've done them since, they have quite explicitly said, like, yes, we have the option to reprint this under a different name as a Magic card, rather than they did with the like they did Crystalline Giant instead of some Godzilla card, for example, right?
Yes, that's it, yeah.
And I think if it's that case, then you kind of don't have any of the downsides, right?
No, exactly. And one interesting thing with the Walking Dead ones. So firstly, Rick Steadfast Leader is annoyingly the best human for Cube. Those ones are getting reprinted in Wilds of Eldraine, actually, as Magic versions of those cards.
Oh, interesting.
Which
That's
is
cool.
quite cool. I'm not a massive fan of the Walking Dead. I didn't buy the actually. I think this was also again the first secret layer. The first couple of secret layers weren't available in the UK, so it wasn't even an option. Yeah, so those cards are getting reprinted in set and collector boosters for Wilds of Eldraine, which is cool because it means I will probably go back to doing humans in Cube because that card because Rick especially is super powerful. Actually, I'll read it out because we're talking about it. So Rick Steadfast Leader is 2 white for a legendary creature human soldier. It is a 3/4. As it enters the battlefield, choose 2 abilities from among First Strike, Vigilance, and Lifelink. Humans you control have each of the chosen abilities, and as long as you control 4 or more humans you control get +2/+2.
Yeah.
That is a lot of value. Like, that is an obscenely good card. And the only reason I haven't been playing with it was because it was in a secret layer that came out years ago and I didn't buy one at the time. So a lot of people being able to get their hands on this, I think, is quite good.
Yeah, no, that sounds like a really nice ad. And humans is such an easy tribe to support as well. Like, you kind of don't need to try to have 10 humans in your decks, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It seems super straightforward and just it's a very good payoff. Cool, but let's keep cracking on. So the rest of this year we do know a fair bit about already. So on October 13th, we're getting 4 Doctor Who Commander-themed decks and also collector boosters that I wasn't aware of, even though I might have been in the room when they spoiled that. Yeah, I'm assuming with that there will be cards that are just in the collector boosters that aren't in the decks. Not a massive fan of that. The thing I liked about the Lord of the Ring, about the Warhammer decks is just it's 4 decks. You buy them, they balance against each other. You play them with collector boosters. I'm assuming you're just adding more. That they're doing that to add more cards. Like if it's just more treatments, I'm kind of fine with that. But I'm assuming they're using it to add more cards, which means you then need to change and rebalance your Time Lord decks as they go on, which I'm less of a fan of, if I'm honest.
Yeah, especially if they're going to be. I know there's been some chat about how the Doctor Who Commander decks are like. I think the prices were released and they were going to be really quite expensive, like significantly more. Like not like super expensive, but like more expensive than regular starter becomes, for example.
More in like because the Commander Masters ones were like £100 or like $90. Like, is it like $100 and like £90 or something like that? Like they were super expensive. Is it that high or?
I vaguely remember something read from Twitter, but
let's have a quick look. So a set of 4 is around £170 in the UK, or about £50 each.
Oh, that's not so bad, actually.
Yeah, that's not super bad. Yeah, that's probably a bit more. I think that is a bit more than the Warhammer ones last year.
Sure. Yeah, but I guess that's fine because they're still like $80.
In November, this is the thing that they kind of talked about, but they actually told us what we're going to be getting. There's going to be more Lord of the Rings. There's going to be reprints with new arts as well as new cards. So get prepared for Orcish Bowmasters 2. It's coming in November.
I have questions. Why, mostly?
So
And is this like a draftable set? What is? I don't quite understand what we're getting here.
So I know part of it is like the panoramas.
Yeah.
They're doing like holiday gift boxes with some of the with like new artwork for like panoramas. So like you buy a gift box and you get like a whole panorama of cards and some booster packs, basically. I have not found the details on new cards, but they have said there will be new cards. It might, if I'm honest, it might end up. There was talk about them doing a Lord of the Rings jumpstart. It might be that. If it's Lord of the Rings jumpstart, I'm kind of fine with that. If it's like that would actually kind of make sense in terms of how you would actually get these new cards. Because if it's just like jumpstart level, then that could be quite cool. Just like 10 new cards or something like that. They're not going to break standard or modern with that, but
yeah, no, it sounds very reasonable. As long as they don't accidentally make a staple in it.
Yes.
Thinking about like the the Nexus of Fate fiasco when you get these super slow supply cards, but don't quite understand why we're going back to Middle Earth straight away, but yeah, go for it.
Because it sold really, really well, James. It sold really well.
It like the highest selling Magic set of all time or something?
I think so. Like I know, like, the last thing I heard was that it was before this. Before this, it was one of the Modern Horizons, and it was getting close to that at a very fast rate, and it's still on sale, and the new set isn't out yet. And if they're going to be doing like this is the same as them putting Avatar back in the cinemas to beat like a film or something like that. It's like keep it coming, it all counts. But yeah, like in general, I've loved the Lord of the Rings set. It's been awesome. I've loved all the flavor, and I think outside of a couple of modern and legacy players, I think most other people would agree with that too.
Yeah, 100%. It's always subjective with this stuff, isn't it? Because it's, if it's like an IP that you like, then you're probably going to like it. And
oh, yes, believe me, we're going to get onto this because it's time to move into 2024. So starting off, I'm on board with this. The first product of 2024 is Ravnica Remastered. So they're combining cards from all of the sets on Ravnica into one draft environment and giving us a bunch of retro frames. I have really liked all of the remasters that they've done. We've had Time Spiral, we've had Dominaria remastered earlier this year. This is something I think they're just doing now every January. I think these have all been pretty solid. I've enjoyed them. The drafts of all of them have been quite fun. I don't include Double Feature in this list. This was in that slot the year beforehand. I think they have learned from that and have actually done a decent job since then of giving people like a good draft environment and good reprints. Because they've really spoiled that like shocks are going to be in this, for example, which is big. Like shocks are stupidly expensive. More reprints and more reprints. And yeah, if the draft environment is good, I'm on board with this.
Yeah, this sounds cool. I imagine we don't know, but I'm guessing this won't come to Arena. This will be paper only or paper Magic Online.
Yeah, so I don't believe this one is coming to Arena, but we'll do a full Arena update at the end of the video. So the first standard set of 2024 is Murders at Karlov Manor. This is a murder mystery set on Ravnica. They specifically said it's not a guild set, but there will be like members of guilds there and a mystery woven into the story and mechanics. So maybe what you were saying about like the clue token stuff. I think this could be quite cool.
Yeah, this sounds sweet. No guilds in a Ravnica set is kind of. I always thought that was like the defining characteristic of a Ravnica set in a lot of ways.
It's basically that they're using Ravnica as a backdrop, and then telling a story on Ravnica. I guess because they like Ravnica, but yeah, it's a story on Ravnica. But it's like there will be like Orzhov people there and like Gruul Smash people there, but it's kind of it's not like broken up into the guilds because also this is only one set, so you're not going to have all 10 guilds represented by like defining things. I think the takeaway is it's a murder mystery set. It just happens to be set on Ravnica, I guess, because it's in a city, so they kind of it's an easy way of like basically they have the lore. They don't have to make a whole new world for this. They just expand on what they have.
Yeah, that sounds sweet. I hope they have something slightly more creative than look, guys, there's loads of clue tokens. But,
I would assume so. Like, yeah, again, kind of like because we're so far out. Like, and this is going to get more apparent as we go down the list. But like, they're not really kind of give me details, shockingly, of like mechanics for sets that are coming out next year. But yeah, like I think they've kind of generally said they specifically used the word that the murder mystery would be woven into the story and the mechanics. So maybe there are ways of kind of like if you can like j'accuse someone and like go to jail or something like that.
J'accuse 100% needs to be a card.
Yeah, I'd be fully up for that. But that does seem quite fun. One tie-in with this, which initially I wasn't going to talk about, but then they specifically said that there would be magic cards involved, is they're making Ravnica Cluedo. For our American listeners, that would be Clue. We call it Cluedo over here. So it's not a reskin of Cluedo. They are making magic cards involved. Like there is a magic. You are using magic cards to play Cluedo. How that works, and like whether it's just like a magic card version of like the rope or the revolver or like the drawing room or something, I'm not entirely sure. But
that sounds kind of cool.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. They did do a board game similarly to this in like Explorers of Ixalan, which I think people said was fine. I know those who played it enjoyed it, but I don't think a great amount of people played it. But yeah, I mean, try new things if it's fun. Yeah. If it's good, I'm always up for it.
Yeah, no, I could see it. I'll definitely be reading the reviews before go to anything. But it sounds right. It's I think it's fair to say Wizards do have a mixed track record when designing things that aren't magic cards.
They made Pokemon, James. That's pretty popular.
It's quite a long time ago, but they made Pokemon.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, it could be cool.
Yeah, if it's good. I mean, I haven't played Cluedo in like about 15 years, but I'll give it a go. Moving on now, in March 2024, we have Fallout Commander. So this is 4 Commander decks set in the world of Fallout. The details are still a bit vague, but it's like if anyone's ever played Fallout, you're going to be seeing the Vault Dwellers. I have not played a Fallout game. I probably played Cluedo, but more recently than I played Fallout. Like I only played like 3, I think, back in the day. This seems like another one that if people like it, awesome, crack on. Like this one, this is kind of the first one of all the Universes Beyond that I'm not super hyped for, if I'm honest with you. And that's just mainly because I'm never really got invested in specifically this IP. If there's cool cards, awesome, I will play with them. But this isn't one I'm going to be rushing out to buy personally. If you love Fallout, awesome, crack on, have a great time. James, what's your experience? Have you played Fallout much?
Yeah, I played. I think it was also Fallout 3. This was quite a long time ago. I think I played a lot of Skyrim, and then it was made by the same people. So I bought the next Fallout game. Yeah, it was a pretty fun game. I'm not like very invested in VIP, but I kind of feel like because these are just commander decks, right?
Yep, just commander decks.
And that's kind of like if they did like the sort of set they just did for Lord of the Rings, and it was an IP that I don't care at all about, then that kind of like detracts from the set. And
we might be getting to
the
that
main set we're drafting. That's a bit annoying. Whereas commander decks, I'm like, yeah, fine, probably won't buy it, but no worries, make it. Some people will love it.
No, exactly. And like, yeah, in general, with all of these, like, there's a couple later on that I personally have less knowledge and involvement with than Fallout. And just in general with all of them, like give me 1 or 2 cool cube cards, 3 or 4 cool commander cards. That is how I will interact with them. But if people like, if this is your jam, and especially if this gets people into playing Magic, then I think in general it'll be a good thing. But yeah, Fallout Commander is out in March 2024. The second standard set, so I'm assuming this will be kind of like the end of spring, start of summer standard set in 2024, is Outlaws of Thunder Junction, which is a cowboy set. It's set in the West. So this is a bunch of villains from Magic coming together to get up to hijinks. I would assume rob a bank. Like I'm assuming they're going to be leaning into the Western tropes quite heavily with this. Of all the ones on this list, I'm actually quite up for this one. This one, like, there's so much like world building you can do with like a Magic cowboy set. I think it could be quite awesome.
Yeah, I could see it. I could see it working. It's one of those where like when you see the cards, you'll know if it works, right? Because it's quite a big departure for Magic, this, right, from their usual setting. It'll be kind of interesting to see. Magic cards in general have not really done guns as a thing, right? They tend to steer away from that, and that's like very central to cowboy stuff, I would say.
Very Western, yeah. Like, I mean, I think there was like a Tommy gun in Streets of New Capenna, but it was just a bad card, I think. So they didn't make that much of an impact. But yeah, specifically with the Western, like it's after like if the top three aren't like hat, horse, and like revolver, I'm not entirely sure what else you're stereotyping your cowboy as. But yeah, it'll be interesting. Like, I'm assuming they must have thought about this for quite a while. But
no, I could see it being cool.
What if it's like reverse energy? You start with 6. You will start the game with 6 energy or something like that, or bullets.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
They can't do bullet tokens. That would not be good.
No, that would not be.
That is not the vibe we're after. Yeah. I'm up for this. I think this could be cool. Moving on to a premium set that I think all of us are slightly trepidatious about. Modern Horizons 3. They've announced it. I think people liked Modern Horizons 1. There were a couple of cards in there that improved formats. Some of them broke Legacy, but Ren and 6 is fine, really. But Modern Horizons 2, I think, kind of pushed the envelope maybe a little bit too far. This was in kind of the heart, like in the pinnacle of like the fire design of just like make stuff broken, see what we get. This is obviously like Modern Horizons 2 is where we got the Evoke elementals, like the most recent ones. We got Ragavan, all this kind of stuff. What's your thoughts on Modern Horizons 3, James? Like, now they've opened the can of worms of Modern Horizons. Are you excited by this? Do you want more of this, or do you just want them to leave your format alone?
It's interesting. It's interesting because I do actually think MH2 made Modern a better format. Like, it's a lot more interactive. Like, if you look at the push cards in MH2, they're mostly interaction, and I think it really added to it. Like, there's a lot more back and forth. There used to be very much a trope modern, like, it's like two ships passing in the night, and you have like some busted sideboard cards, like your Rest in Peace and your Stony Silence, and that was kind of all that mattered. And it's very much not that anymore. And I think MH2 has been a big part of that. Having said that, Modern is so much about cards from the last 2 Modern Horizons sets.
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
There's a pretty big risk that it kind of is trending towards Modern Horizons block constructed, which is not ideal.
Yeah, or the other way I've heard it being described is that it's effectively a rotation every time a Modern Horizons comes out.
Right, exactly. Like, there kind of aren't decks that were decks pre-MH2 that are still good now, right? And it does get to that thing of, like, especially, in a few months, if you're like, oh, I want to buy into Modern, and bearing in mind that largely because of Modern Horizons, because they're so expensive, most of these decks are like around the $1,000 mark. It's like, are you going to drop $1,000 on a deck that might just be completely outdated in a few months' time? Probably not. And I think, because that is the strength, in theory, of having a non-rotating format, right? That's the edge Modern has over something like Standard.
Well, it's one of the selling points.
Exactly.
Yes, it's more expensive to get into, but you don't need to be buying cards every month. This kind of thing. Like you can have your deck.
Exactly. Like, spend £1,000 on a Modern deck, but you can play that deck with only minor changes for years. Like, that's a reasonable proposition. But if it feels like it rotates every year or two, that's kind of not. So I think they have to be careful, basically. It would help a lot if they were not so expensive, because then your Ragavans and your Solitudes and whatnot are not so expensive. But Wizards is a business. Wizards are going to make money. Yeah.
I guess one thing with Modern Horizons 2 is they did reprint a load of cards from Modern Horizons 1 in it. So if they just keep that, like, even if Modern Horizons 3 only has Modern Horizons 2 reprints in it, it will still help with that. But just basically, like, just keep reprint the ones you've already printed into like to make them more attainable, as well as some new broken cards. Because I guess the best ideal with this is like there are like 2 or 3 format or cards that kind of make decks, a bunch of cards that assist decks, kind of like top up a deck that already exists, and then the rest is just good reprints. Like that is kind of the ideal scenario. But obviously, we know that from Modern Horizons 2, they may be pushing the power level. Hopefully, they've learned from that. But I guess we will find out in the summer next year. Right. Talking of another set that can make a monumental impact to Modern for some reason. Next, we have the Assassin's Creed set, which is not a sentence I should be saying. But this is the first time they are labeling this as a Beyond booster. Basically, this is going to be similar to March of the Machines Aftermath, like the little 10-pack boosters. This is what they're doing with Assassin's Creed. They are selling like mini booster packs. They're non-draftable. They will have new cards in them, which will be Modern legal, which that's where the interesting part with this. They have said there'll be reprints in this, though, which could be interesting, especially if they pick the reprints correctly. What do you think about Ezio from Modern Horizons? What do you think about Ezio from Assassin's Creed 3 ruining Modern, James? What's your take on that?
I have no idea who that is, but yeah, I don't know. I've never played this Assassin's Creeds, really. There's sometimes an assumption that like all Magic players are gamers, right? Like in the broader sense, like they also spend a bunch of their spare time playing PC games and whatnot. I don't think that's really the case. I think there's a lot of Magic players who aren't, and I have no like making the commander decks and whatnot. It's like fine, yeah. If you're just like not into that, you can just not buy those, and that's fine. But this is like going to be the main draft set for a few months, right?
No. Sorry. This is not a draft set. This is like it's non-draftable. It's like 10 card booster packs.
Sorry, I was looking at the wrong thing.
No, all good. Yeah. This is just like a supplementary thing. Like basically, the way I'm taking this is they didn't have enough there to make commander decks or a whole set out of it. So it's basically how can we make some cards for this IP and it not be a secret layer and piss everyone off? Is kind of the vibe I'm getting with this.
Oh, okay. Then, yeah, go for it. Why not? But Modern legal is still kind of weird to me.
Yes, for me, that is the only part that could be a bit iffy, and I'm hoping that's just because they're going to put some modern legal reprints in it, like put some lands in there, that kind of thing. Like maybe this is where like maybe they can reskin like triomes to be like Istanbul or like places you've seen from the games, that kind of stuff. Like, I mean, it might not be ideal, but it is a way you can do reprints like that.
Yeah, that could be fine. But there's also a pretty big issue here, right? Like, if they're making presumably a reasonable number of cards here, right? If this is like a thing they're selling booster packs of, it's not just a couple of decks. And if one of those becomes modern, like a modern, like very widely played modern play card, even if it's not like broken or anything, because it's not drafted, there's going to be really short supply, right? Like it'll just be whoever likes Assassin's Creed enough to buy the deck. Like sets that aren't drafted are always very low supply. So if there's just like one or two cards for the players in Modern, they're going to be incredibly expensive and really hard to get hold of.
No, exactly. And that was, if I'm honest, my primary and actually only issue with March of the Machines Aftermath was just some of the cards were just wildly expensive because no one opened it. Like, to be fair, this could be opened more if Assassin's Creed players like it. And if there's good cards, like I'm kind of, a lot of stuff we're talking about is very much based on power level being accurate for what it is. My hope would be that they will balance this, like with especially because at a minimum, all of these Universes Beyond cards are like vintage and legacy legal, but like the ones that are modern legal have a bigger player base. I would assume they will not put anything in there. I mean, famous last words. Cut to a year's time, and yeah, like the boat from Black Flag has broken modern. Cool, love that. But I think these will be fine, if I'm honest with you. I think
if they're just conscious of that when they make their design choices, right? It's kind of one of those where you need to aim a decent chunk below playable in Modern so that if you miss and it's a bit more powerful than you thought, you've not created a massive problem.
Yeah, 100%. Right, so after Assassin's Creed, we move into the Dragonstorm arc. So we have the Omen Path arc for all from Wildspell Drain for a year. Then we move into the Dragonstorm arc with Bloomborrow. It's a world of anthropomorphic animals. It's basically animals that are people. They kind of walk and talk. They have swords. They have little hats and stuff. There's no humans. The animals are the main characters. If you like looking at cat pictures, which I will put myself in, like, before anyone says anything, no shade, I am a proud cat father. I will perfectly happily look at cat pictures. This set looks adorable. I'm kind of here for it. Have you seen any of the artwork or anything like that, James?
It sounds cool. I've not seen much artwork. I did read somewhere that they were basing their scaling of creatures off a 1/1 as a mouse.
Really? Okay, sick.
And going up from there, which I quite liked. Yeah, this sounds cool. Go for it. So no humans is interesting. So presumably, like, no characters we know, right? Like, I'm assuming if there's not humans, there's also not, like, it would be a bit like there's not vampires and the other people we know as well, right? It's all just going to be animals.
What? Like, there could be like a planeswalker, like there are like some bears which are legendary creatures. Yeah, maybe that kind of thing. Like
Ragavan can come back.
Ragavan, there we go. Oh, another Ragavan. Okay.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, something like that I think could be the way they go with it. But it looks awesome. Again, this is very far out that we've only seen a couple of images, but it looks quite cool. After that, this one is the one that I am I think is really cool, but I'm not sure how they're going to do it. Dustmourn House of Horror. From the trailer, it kind of looks like Stranger Things, the set, but this is a top-down modern horror set in the 70s and 80s, or kind of like it with the theme of 70s and 80s horror movies. And the whole plane is set inside one mansion.
That's pretty spicy.
Yeah, like that actually sounds really cool.
If they can pull that off, I think that could be great, actually.
Yeah, that's like, I kind of thought that like doing a Western was quite high concept for them. Like in terms of making it kind of fit into like the fantasy-ish setting that we know with Magic. But yeah, a whole horror set with everything being in one plane. Or with the whole plane being inside one haunted mansion type thing. I think that could be awesome. I'm kind of that. It's another one like they're definitely taking risks next year, and I think it could be quite cool.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm feeling like, how do you get across like a jump scare on a Magic card? Like, I'm interested to see what they come out with.
Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah. I think this one will be really cool. Yeah. The artwork is awesome. So those are the sets for 2024. They're definitely taking risks, I guess. Like it's the most out there in terms of years. Like there's no. Like, Murders at Karlov Manor is set on Ravnica, but it's not a Ravnica set. So there's no real, like, return to things in 2024. And yeah, finishing off with the whole plane inside one mansion, I think is a cool way of going. We're going to quickly touch on 2025 and then 2026 because, again, these are so far out, we don't have that much notes of them. Start of 2025, we have Innistrad Remastered. Similar to the other ones we've seen, this will be bringing all the stuff from Innistrad back together. In a remastered set, hopefully doing the job that Double Feature was meant to do.
Yeah, that sounds great. I really enjoyed Dominaria Remastered, and Innistrad's kind of amongst the most beloved Magic planes, I think, at this point. So yeah, sounds like a winner.
No, exactly. And then in 2025, the sets we're so far out, the sets don't have names yet. So this set has the working title or the code name of Tennis, and it is a Death Race set. So it is about a bunch of people racing across 3 worlds in the multiverse. 2 are on sets we've been to but never returned to, and the 3rd set we've seen on cards but never been to as a main set. And like the 3 planes within that are the racetrack. Like Death Race was a pretty middling Jason Statham film. Or the original was Sylvester Stallone's acting debut. But as an idea, again, this sounds quite out there, but quite cool.
Is this actually based off Death Race for film? Is that?
No, I very much doubt they are. Like, I would like Jason Statham as a playable Magic card, but I don't think that's where they're going with this.
I was like, that's a real reach. Like, of all the IPs to go to, like, Death Race, guys.
It's a Death Race themed set. It is not a Death Race IP based set, but it could be quite cool.
Okay. Yeah, why not? It sounds like they're still working out the details on this one, but
but I mean, if they can have like a racing, like you could easily see, like we've had like battles where you're trying to win a battle, you could quite easily try and win a race. Like maybe race is a type of battle now. I don't know.
Yeah,
we can go around Monaco as a secret layer or something. We'll work it out. But yeah, after that, we then have Ultimate, which is a return to Tarkir, which I think people remember Tarkir quite fondly. It's one of the first sets I played when I got back into Magic. They describe this as being the best of both Khans and Dragons. So what they're doing with the timeline, I have no idea. But there will be Khans, there will be Dragons, smush them together, give people what they remember. You'd assume that means fetch lands, maybe, but I don't know, we'll find out.
I'm sure they'll manage to figure out some narrative gymnastics to make the timeline work. But
Sarkhan messed up again. Yeah,
I'm super hyped for this. Khans was my first set when I started playing Magic, and I think everyone has a bit of a soft spot for the first set I played. But I thought Khans was a phenomenal draft set. I really hope this means they're bringing Morph back.
Oh, that'd be sweet. Yeah, I love Morph.
I really like Morph as a limited
mechanic. I miss Morph, actually. Morph is awesome. Yeah,
I'm really surprised it's been so long. I think Morph plays great. I'm kind of surprised they haven't brought it back before now. But yeah, I guess that is when we're getting Morph, I'd imagine.
No, that'd be awesome. Right, moving on to... So this set is the one that is the draftable experience, the same as Lord of the Rings. And it's Universes Beyond Final Fantasy. I'm going to leave this bit of silence in, if I'm honest with you. like, I know so many people who love Final Fantasy. Awesome. My one experience is I played Final Fantasy VII for about 10 hours, climbed this pipe, and got stuck. And then retraced my way through the whole game. Couldn't find anything to do. Looked... Actually, this wasn't even online at this point, because it was like looked at the guide, and it just says climb the pipe. And that is the last I've ever interacted with a Final Fantasy game, and that was about probably more than 20. More than 20 years ago. A lot of people like Final Fantasy. If this gets people into Magic the same way that Lord of the Rings has, awesome. But I will be less hyped for this because I care less about the IP. What about you, James? I'm assuming from that silence that you were just revving yourself up to talk about your love for Final Fantasy.
I'm going to have the same rant as earlier, and we can edit that one out. Yeah, I don't really... I mean, so, full disclosure, I've never played a Final Fantasy game. And I really hope I'm not, just shitting on this idea, because I haven't played the game. But I kind of think, for all the, non-Magic IP stuff, unless it's super universal or something like Lord of the Rings, put it in the form of commander sets, commander decks, or supplemental product or whatever, and that's fine, because the people who just aren't invested in that thing can just not engage. Whereas this can be the main draft set for a few months, right?
It'll be basically the summer of 2025 will be Final Fantasy.
Right, exactly. You open up Arena and you want to do a draft, it's going to be Final Fantasy. The Arena Opens will be Final Fantasy. The RCQs will be Final Fantasy.
Yeah, the Pro Tour is going to be Final Fantasy.
Yeah. And I kind of feel I think sometimes there's an assumption, maybe but all Magic players are gamers in the sense of play a bunch of PC games and stuff in their spare time as well. Which definitely a bunch are, but I think a bunch aren't as well. Those demographics are not exactly the same. I don't think that's Wizards' whole audience. And I think it's kind of weird having this the main draft set be just different IP that probably a bunch of your audience have just never engaged with at all.
No, No, that's true.
I don't know. Maybe Final Fantasy is like way more popular than I think it is, but I know it is like really popular amongst like gamers, but I don't think it's like universally like known and loved thing, right?
No, that's true. And so my inclination is to and I completely agree with everything you just said, and my inclination is just to continue to agree with you. I'm trying there will be people who will be brought into Magic by this, and there will be plenty of people who are aware of Lord of the Rings but never interacted with it, never saw it at the cinema, but have interacted with Final Fantasy. There could be a thing of maybe Final Fantasy has more of a global appeal in less westernized places. That might be a thing. They definitely if they're putting this much into it, especially after the success of Lord of the Rings. Basically, there's two things that they consider. Kind of is the reward going to be worth the effort, basically? And they must have done the math and come to the conclusion that the next biggest available IP out there that they can do is Final Fantasy. The thing in general with this universe beyond is it's going to get trickier and trickier. Some things will tie in, and some things like Hasbro will have relationships with. That's why we got Walking Dead, because I think the parent company is involved with AMC, so they could just get the licenses super quickly. So they just did it really quickly and just okay, done. They wanted to get involved with that kind of thing. This might be a larger conversation for another time, but kind of it's finding IPs that fit in the realms of Magic. And what we've known in the past is going to get trickier as we go through. There's only so many Lord of the Rings out there.
I mean, I think there kind of aren't any that hit that exact crossover, right? And
I've just thought of one, and I hate it.
Go on.
Harry Potter.
Oh yeah, no, that'll 100% be a thing.
No,
won't it?
Harry Potter fans. I read the first 5 and then stopped, and I've not seen the films. If you like Harry Potter, again, there is no hate on this podcast at all. This is just me shouting at things. But Harry Potter would be a big one.
I loved the Harry Potter books. I thought they were all great. But,
and his Magic games.
I still don't think they should do it as a main draft set. Yeah, I think. I think obviously they're trying to replicate the success they had with Lord of the Rings, right? Which, definitely seems like it was a home run for them. I think the thing is, you compare Lord of the Rings to Final Fantasy, I think there are probably as many people who are really, really into Final Fantasy as there are people who are really, really into Lord of the Rings. I mean, that's complete conjecture. I don't know if that's true, but I could definitely believe that was true. But Lord of the Rings is your mum knows what Lord of the Rings is and could probably name a couple of characters, right? Whereas that's definitely not true with Final Fantasy. There are a whole bunch of people who know zero about it, right?
No, exactly. But yeah, I guess time will tell on this. This set is still effectively this is 20 months away. It's just under 2 years away. So there's plenty of time. I guess we'll kind of see. Yeah, I guess we'll see how it goes close to the time. Again, with all of these, if there's cool cards, then I'll probably enjoy some of it. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. Because after Final Fantasy, we have Volleyball, which is the new arc in the 3-year storyline. This is a sci-fi set. It is a space opera. That's really cool. We know nothing about this apart from some key bits of art, which just look like Stellaris visuals, that kind of stuff. It just looks like cool things in space. Yeah, I'm up for this. Again, they're pushing the boundaries. I think this could be fun.
Yeah, this looks very sweet. I thought some of the art looked great. Yeah, I'm really excited to see how this one pans out.
Yeah. I mean, there could be an element of, with them pushing into Western and pushing into Haunted House and pushing into space, they are kind of opening us up subconsciously to Magic being able to do all these things, and then maybe that's how it ties in a bit easier, but that's a separate conspiracy for another time. Right, because at the end of 2025, we have the set that's currently codenamed Wrestling, which is a return to Lorwyn. People have been wanting this for a while. We're returning to Lorwyn. They've said it's going to be in a similar way as we went back to Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. So whether that's a time shift or maybe looking at it through a slightly different lens, I would assume it's something like that, because they've done a pretty good job of not just in the last couple of years anyway, just of not just repeating the same thing again. Because I think when they've done that, people I think they learned a lot from Battle for Zendikar, basically.
Return to Ravnica.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of go back to a place we like, do something cool with it, and that's kind of where we are. And then the last, we have 2 more. Sorry, 2026. Right, we have Yachting, which is a return to Strixhaven. That is all we know about this. The set is not called Yachting. That is just the code name for the set. Strixhaven was fun. I think it was generally quite liked. Maybe this is when we get the Harry Potter set properly.
I mean, yeah, if they're doing Jurassic Park with Ixalan, if they can have that negotiation, then I'm sure they will do.
Someone has already had that. Yes, someone's already speaking with Warner Brothers to get that. And then the last thing we know about in 2026 is ziplining. This is like the War of the Spark, March of the Machine end of the story arc that starts with Wild of Eldraine. So that's like 3 years worth of story will culminate in ziplining. Basically, they can't tell us anything about it because anything would be a spoiler. But that story will end in 2026. In general, I've liked the fact that they are planning that far ahead in terms of their storyline. It means that you can kind of do slow burns over the stories as well. They are definitely making more of an effort with the story of the last couple of years. Like, it's out on YouTube now, this kind of stuff. Like, there's an audiobook going through the stories. Like, they're making it more accessible. And in general, like, this is just a way of getting more people invested in it, basically. So, yeah, I think it's cool.
Yeah, sounds sweet.
Right, our last bit of news is arena updates. This was kind of interwoven into the presentation of the timeline, but I thought we just took it all that in one go because it's just going to be easier for everyone this way, and it will really kind of give people an idea of where they're going with arena in a nice, clear, and concise way. So, a couple of updates that are coming soon. So with most of these, I'm assuming you're going to be on board, James, but do shout if there's anything you're not a fan of. But so the first thing they're doing is that in the next couple of months, they are adding improved duplicate protection. Details will be announced soon, but it sounds like a way of meaning you don't end up with a bunch of the same cards every time something gets reprinted. The example they used was Duress. So at the moment, every time Duress is printed, you need to get 4 of them in every set to complete the vault.
Yeah. I mean, this is obviously a good thing. I think the arena economy has some wider issues, but I think they're realistically not getting addressed. Like, the majority of the problem a lot of people have with arena compared to the other, comparable products from other companies is way more expensive. And, whenever they make changes to the arena economy, people are frustrated that it doesn't solve that problem. And it's like, that is a feature, not a bug, as far as Wizards are concerned. It is as expensive as they want it to be. And I honestly, sounds like it's still making a lot of money. I'd be pretty surprised if that changes. Obviously, better duplicate protection, better than not having it. I think they're just trying to reduce some of the feel bads, but
yeah, exactly. And especially because most of these are just going to be commons and uncommons. Like, it's not like they don't reprint rares outside of lands super often into standard legal sets. Like in the future, they will happen more as they make more sets and stuff. But it is more like commons and uncommons to just help people out, basically. But yeah, it's a little thing. The other thing that they are talking about, which sounds actually really interesting, and there's this one they don't have a timescale on yet, but it's effectively they're going to be connecting F&M and store play to arena. They did not give details of how this will work, but it sounds like you can transfer your tournament results from when you play in paper, and it will add to your mastery in arena. In theory, they can go further. Like, they can do more. Like, I personally want codes in booster packs that gives you cards on arena, but that's a separate conversation. But this at least seems like a way of linking paper play and rewarding people who are playing in paper with arena. So it's just in theory, this will be you're getting more for the same things you're already doing.
Yeah, I think this is a good thing for them to explore. I don't think mastery past progress, it's not the biggest thing, but it seems better than not doing it. And I think just linking those two ecosystems is a good thing. And just having that thing that your stuff that matters at F&M links to something else is quite a good thing. I think that's when they got rid of Planeswalker points, they kind of lost a lot of that. I thought that was actually I really liked Planeswalker points, and a lot of it was because you were kind of accomplishing something, either just by going to F&M and you get 2 buys or whatever, and that's pretty good. obviously this is just some Mastery Pass stuff, but I think like just connecting those two things is pretty good.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, my guess was Mastery Pass. They haven't. There's still the information for this is going to come out. Like, I doubt they're going to give you like gold or that kind of stuff. But but yeah, we'll get more information soon. They have also mentioned there's going to be a new achievement system, which that is still the information they have given, but it's basically more ways of you getting gold. Like, basically, I'm assuming this sounds more or less like more kind of like the play 3 creatures, this kind of stuff, rather than the winning the games type of rewards. They're going to be looking at that coming soon. In terms of things that are going to be coming out, this is where things get quite interesting, and it's things that people have been like pining for quite a while. We had Shadows over Innistrad remastered earlier this year. They've confirmed that this is going to be the last remastered set for some time. They have announced, though, that Khans of Tarkir is going to be released in full. Like, it's not a remastered set, the whole set. I'm assuming this will be draftable. It makes sense if this is draftable, but they just said the whole set is going to be released in full onto Arena, which is cool. Does that mean, do we have fetch lands on Arena yet?
We don't have fetch lands on Arena currently, so this would be really big for that. Although that does only affect like Historic, not Explorer, which will become Pioneer. But yeah, no, that'll be an absolutely massive change for Historic as a format. And I'm pretty down with just getting to draft Khans on Arena. That sounds sweet.
Yeah, you mentioned Pioneer there. I guess the bigger thing that they have said is their goal is to have all relevant Pioneer cards playable on Arena by the end of 2024. That means they're going to be doing a Pioneer Masters on Arena, but that's that's like a bit over a year away. That's a decent enough roadmap. Like, at least we know there is a roadmap and we know it's coming now, but like obviously we would all like it now so we can actually play a Pioneer on Arena and you don't have the 2 different formats. But that is at least a good, like, at least we know what they're aiming for now. Yeah, end of 24, like, James, I'm assuming just Pioneer being on Arena is just going to be a good thing in general.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's also actually quite important for, again, that thing of connecting Arena players and getting them to play more on paper.
Exactly, yeah.
And vice versa. Like, I was chatting to one of our mutual friends recently who was, like, vaguely interested in going to an RCQ, plays a bunch on Arena, and it's just like a bit of an annoying obstacle that the format he plays on Arena is like the same but naturally still pretty meaningfully different from the RCQ format.
Yeah, no,
and like no one's gonna like go and download Magic Online and get all these cards to test for the RCQ, right? That's
no, exactly.
Like, it's a lot smoother if that format is the same on Arena.
Yeah, especially as to get to the point where you have the deck on Arena, you've put time into it because time is one of the currencies that they use. So you've invested not just some cash, but also your commitment to building that deck. I completely understand that. Then the last thing that they have mentioned, the last big thing, which I think is one thing that I think a lot of us have wanted from the start, is that this is not an announcement for anything. They have said they are looking at having multiplayer on Arena sometime in 2025 or 2026. The swift passage of time speeds up more as you get older, so this will be coming out in no time, basically. They haven't said if it's going to be Arena or if it's going to be a separate app. They said they're going to keep it within the economy, but just in terms of how the system is built, it might this is something that it's still early days. Nothing's been confirmed yet, but from the sounds of it, the things that they are exploring are Magic Arena is where you play one-on-one in this client, and then there's a separate one for multiplayer, but everything carries over. You still maybe there's a central hub where you build your decks, and then you click on single player and it opens up Arena, or you click on multiplayer. I'm assuming because just the coding for this is going to be quite convoluted, especially when you have to make it work on mobile and iOS and all this kind of stuff.
Are you really going to try and play a 4-player Commander game on your phone? That sounds absolutely heinous.
Heroes, whoever does that.
They're going to be roofing every single turn. I very much doubt this is ever a feature I will use. I really like Commander, but I want to play it in a pub with people I know, not like...
But content, James, is going to make making multiplayer content so much easier.
Sure, yeah, I could see that if you're in the multiplayer content creation thing.
we all get Command Zone level fancy graphics now.
There we go.
Let's go.
Yeah. That's a
I don't need to learn After Effects. I've got Arena. Right, awesome. So that was a lot of news. They spent a long time going over what's going to be coming up, and there's a lot of cool things. Quickly, James, just out of interest, what of everything they went through, everything that we've spoiled and we've learned, what are you most excited by?
So I think like the cowboy set sounds pretty cool. Space opera set, I'm absolutely in for. But generally, I'm someone who like I get excited for a set when like I see the spoiler, not like from the artwork, whatever. So really, what I'm most excited for is I want to draft Khans of Tarkir on Arena. It's going to be great.
No, let's go.
What about you?
That makes sense. It's from a set point of view, Cowboys does sound super cool. I'm kind of up for that, but also I'm probably most intrigued by the whole plane in one set, like Dustmourn, House of Horror. That's what I'm most intrigued by. If I'm honest, like all of the main set stuff that they have announced, I'm fully on board with. I think will be cool. Some of the, most of the, all of the, all of the universes beyond. Like I feel I've been spoiled at the start by them doing Warhammer and Lord of the Rings, which were like the two things apart from Magic I cared about as a kid. Like literally, like they completed my childhood trifecta. Unless they're going to do one about like Newcastle United, which is going to be quite.
They've got the whole Premier League.
Yeah, give me an Alan Shearer card. Like unless like that is going to happen, I very much doubt that they're going to like hit it every time. So. Which is fair, but I guess we'll kind of see what they come up with. I think Magic looks like it's going to be in a good place in a couple of years, which is always good, and a lot of exciting stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, awesome. I think we are going to leave it all there. Thank you all very much for listening. Please make sure you like, share, subscribe, give us a 5-star review, tell a friend, whatever the podcast platform you're listening on lets you give positive affirmation. It would all be greatly appreciated. Just leaves me to thank James for being here. Thank you very much, man.
Yeah, no worries. Anytime. Always a pleasure.
Awesome, dude. Always a pleasure. Until next time, we will both see you all soon. Goodbye.